Like a panther.
You
want to see
Greetings mortals, I'm Key. And if it wasn't already obvious, I haven't been too impressed with Disney's more recent content. And this is coming from someone who grew up with their movies. In fact, despite myself, I still often get the tinglies whenever I hear that old intro. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about how bad I think things have gotten. This time. Instead, I want to talk about a movie that I don't think is talked about too much. And in particular, a certain character from that movie. The story of The Fox and the Hound is well known for being an allegory for war and prejudice, and that's going to be relevant moving forward. However, there are other themes at play during this film, and it's those I really want to talk about. I may also be so bold as to say that The Fox and the Hound is on the list for the most underrated Disney films. From what I can tell, it did mostly fine on release, and it made some money with home video sales. But this film came out during Disney's dark period, where the company was on the verge of shutting down. Hard to believe nowadays. And no one really talks about it. At least compared to the Golden Age, Renaissance, or modern day movies. And I think that's a shame, since there's a lot of really good character writing that's packed into it. At the very least, I hope you'll agree that this film was more unique than maybe most people remember. We'll get to all of that in good time. Now, obviously, I'm going to spoil the whole film, so if you've never seen it before, why not? Go watch it. I'm not going anywhere, just make sure you come back. With that being said, let's dive in. So, straight away, this movie's intro tells us exactly what we're in for. It gives us an idea of how terrifying the life of a fox must be, always on the run from dogs and hunters. Of course, it helps that the visuals are accompanied by an excellent score that demonstrate the feeling of desperation and panic.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
After that brutal opening credit sequence, we see that the fox kit has been left alone in a last-ditch attempt by his mother to keep him alive.
You know, you're gonna need some caring for.
It's only due to the charitable efforts of some clever birds that this baby fox gets to live. And here, we're introduced to the first human character of this film.
Well, bless my soul. Right. It's a baby fox.
Widow Tweed, or the Widow, as the movie never actually tells us her name, decides to look after Todd, since he's definitely not going to make it on his own. She ends up quickly growing attached to the fox, and names him Todd, which is appropriate since male foxes are actually known as Todds. Fun fact. Around the same time that Todd is adopted, we see that just across the widow's house, her neighbor is bringing something back home.
I got a surprise for you, Chief, old boy.
And here he is, the man of the hour. This is Amos Slade, a hunter and farmer by trade it would seem, who, like the widow, lives alone with his now 2 dogs. So now we've met the only 2 human characters in this whole film. That actually brings me to my first point. There are no other people here, only Amos and the widow. We can plainly see that, while she has farm animals to attend to, the widow seems very lonely, and the amount of joy she gets from looking after Todd It's clear she may have been a widow for quite some time.
No, Todd. I'm not going to be so lonesome anymore.
Amos, on the other hand, seems very much in his element. We can see he has no one else around either, but is content with only having his dogs for company. This will be important later, I promise, but let's move on. Also, did you know that the voice actor for Amos Slade is none other than Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka? This was also the actor's last theatrical role before he died. It's not really relevant to the conversation or anything, just a fact I decided to throw in.
My radiator! You're a cheat and a swindler! You're an inhuman monster! I said good day!
Anyway, some time passes, and we can see that while Todd is well looked after, and the widow is happy, things aren't exactly perfect on the farm. So Todd, being only a kid, goes around looking for something to do. Unfortunately, every wild animal he knows is too busy to play with him. After all, most animals aren't lucky enough to have a human looking after them.
Oh, Todd, I just can't stay angry with you.
It seems inevitable then that he would eventually run into the only other person his own age, Copper, a young hound. You probably know the rest, right? They hit it off and have fun, completely unaware of their situation.
Why, it's you. We're supposed to do that when we find what we've been tracking.
It's a cute scene, but you already know it's foreshadowing future events. This carries on, for a time, under everyone's noses, but of course problems start occurring that interrupt their playtime, for reasons beyond their understanding. Eventually their friendship gets them into trouble, and as the weight of Copper's actions begin to get tighter and tighter, it culminates into what I call the first offense.
It's a box. A
Due to a misunderstanding, Chief and his master start hunting Todd, and this is one of the reasons why Amos is well written. Simple as his character is, his actions make sense. We know as the audience that Todd was only here to play, but Amos doesn't. Foxes steal chickens, hunters hunt foxes. Hijinks ensues. Luckily for our protagonist, this chase is played for laughs, like a Looney Tunes skit. But it also serves as a second clue to what the film's trying to tell us. This lifestyle Todd has in human society, it's causing a lot of problems. It's, dare I say, rather fragile. Wow, this would have been a very different film if his aim had just been a little bit higher.
Amos Slade, you trigger-happy lunatic! Give me that gun!
Look at her face! She's so satisfied.
Women.
Dagnabbit woman, your thieving fox was after my chickens!
Now, to be fair, he hasn't done anything particularly villainous yet. I mean, besides property damage. And trying to kill the main character. But don't forget, context matters. However, we're starting to see the cracks form.
If I ever catch that fox on my property again, I'll blast him. And next time, I won't miss.
Not knowing what else to do, the widow decides to keep Todd inside, which she knows is not a great solution.
Poor little tyke. It's a shame I have to keep him cooped up.
But luckily for her, and Todd, Amos is leaving for a seasonal hunting trip, so all is well. For now. Time passes, and we see Copper learning all there is to know about tracking and hunting, and he seems to be very good at it, much to the disappointment of Amos's other dog, Chief. And we can see on the way back that Copper has taken Chief's place by his master's side. Time for a quick tangent. Now, I like dogs, but I've never owned one, nor do I know much about raising them, so maybe there's something to this that I'm just not getting. However, it bugs me seeing Chief knocked down from his place. Sure, Copper may have done better on the trip, and you want to reward that. But Chief is still the alpha canine. He's the senior. I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way. Not really a flaw of the movie though. What this does is inform the character's actions later. Also, I like how Copper shrugs at Chief here. I'm pretty sure dogs don't have a skeleton for that. We move on to see that Todd has also grown to adulthood. And when I watched this movie again to prepare this video, I thought about something I hadn't before. Copper had a lot to keep him busy, but what was Todd doing this whole time? I said before that while Todd seemed happy to live with the widow, life was pretty dull. I mean, he's got plenty of food, warmth, and space to run around and explore, but no one to play with, or even talk with. I imagine Big Mama the Owl must have made things a bit more bearable, being basically a secondary mother figure to Todd. But things were probably much more fun with his friend around, which leads me to believe he might have just been counting the days until Copper returned. With that context, it makes the next scene all more hard to watch.
Look, don't worry. I'll be careful. I'll go over tonight when Chief and the hunter are sound asleep.
He sneaks over by nightfall to see Copper, but not before we get a brief interaction with Copper and Chief.
Boy, it's great to be back home, isn't it, Chief?
Let's talk a bit about Chief, shall we? We can see that he's still a bit miffed about Copper outdoing him on the hunting trip. So Copper, being the good boy he is, tries to cheer him up a bit. And it works, for a few seconds. Then Chief turns the tables and berates Copper for goofing off too much.
You know that was your trouble on the hunt?
Aw, come on, old-timer. You treat me like a pup, you know that?
Now, this scene is pretty short, but it actually gives us a surprising amount of stuff to chew on. It should be obvious that Chief is more than a little jealous of Copper, maybe even worried that he's going to get replaced by him. But have you noticed how he's not really being all that mean to Copper? Cranky and irritable, yes, but he's not lashing out at him here. He's still giving him what he believes to be genuine advice.
I think I done real good tracking down them varmints for you.
Smelling and tracking ain't enough. You gotta think nasty.
Now, as far as supporting characters go in this film, Chief is the one that lends the most weight towards character development, namely for Copper. He's kind of what Big Mama is for Todd, an elder animal who's experienced the kind of life that Topper and Copper have only Topper and Conker? The kind of life that Todd and Copper have only just begun to. As much as Chief might want to hate Copper and what he represents, he doesn't. It didn't take long for them to bond when Copper arrived, and he goes out of his way to support him during the hunting trip, to show Copper how things are done. And he's still doing that, even now, despite how much Copper's already grown in such a short amount of time. There is still the other element of his character, the one that wants to prove he's still got something Copper doesn't, his wisdom. And he probably brings it up to make himself feel better, so no, it's not like he's completely selfless. But I like how rounded he is. He's got a bit more going on than Big Mama in terms of character. However, his character story in this film isn't perfect. There's something right around the corner that bugs me about Chief, and if you remember how the next few scenes go, you might be able to guess what it is. Once Chief and Copper fall asleep, Todd decides to go show himself, and once again, we're shown just how strong Copper's sense of smell truly is.
Hey, Copper. It's me, Todd.
At first, Copper's face lightens up at seeing his old friend again. But he isn't a puppy anymore. He understands fully now why Todd was driven off by his master and chief before. That they're natural-born enemies. Todd asks, with a worried look, if they're still friends.
We're still friends, aren't we?
It's as if he already knew the answer coming here. And yes, Copper has to shut him down. And Todd's face has an air of depression, disappointment, anguish. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to write for my script, but I think all of those work. I also like how Copper's face screws up when he confirms, as if more to himself than Todd, that he's a hunting dog now. And yet, when he sees a look on Todd's face, his demeanor swiftly changes. He knows their situation sucks, and it's obvious he wishes things were different, that they could be buddies again. So much of this scene, and the movie as a whole in fact, is told through facial expressions and body language. It's a trademark ability of a good actor when you can tell what they're thinking, or feeling, just by seeing their face and body language. You don't need dialogue to explain any of that, or a narrator's disembodied voice to dumb it down for the audience.
I hate you so much. I'm just trying to make some friends. You know? I'm sad.
Sorry. Making fun of the dialogue of Kingdom Hearts is like kicking a sick puppy. I'll stop. But this is why I adore animation so much. Because with an actor, even a really good one, they can only ever perform to the best of their human ability. But an illustration, an animated character, it's like a puppet that you can control at 100%. The only limit to their visual performance is what you can draw, sculpt, or rig. The catch is that it takes a long time to do it well. Like, a long time. Copper goes on to warn Todd that they can't hang out like this with Chief and the Hunter around. To which Todd says,
Oh, Chief, he doesn't worry me.
showing us that he still doesn't understand the gravity of his situation, that he still doesn't take danger seriously. Despite almost getting shot last time, and Big Mama and the other birds giving him a lesson, in song form no less.
Lack of education.
Yeah, but you can't blame him though. Unlike other foxes, he was raised in a domestic environment. He hasn't had to worry about things like survival, or avoiding enemies. He's a farm boy. Unfortunately for Todd, his actions are going to have consequences this time, in what I call the second offense. The presence of Todd wakes up Chief, who immediately does what any good hunting dog would do and alerts the hunter that there's a fox on the farm. And Amos, true to his word to the widow, leaps right into action. And the chase is on. Only this time, Copper is a trained hunting dog, and the widow isn't around to save the day.
No, they're after Todd.
But despite being naive and having lived such a sheltered life, Todd still has the instincts of a fox, and immediately runs into the night to escape. Of course, the one leading the charge is none other than Chief, who's been given a second chance to catch the same fox. This is his moment to prove he's just as good a hunting dog as Copper. Despite this though, Todd gives him the slip, but the same trick doesn't fool Copper, with his keen sense of smell. As his master starts to catch up, Copper makes a split-second decision and chooses friendship over loyalty.
Todd, I don't want to see you get killed. I'll let you go this one time.
Giving Todd a chance to escape by luring the hunter in the wrong direction. But Chief hasn't given up and catches Todd off guard. Now it's up to him to catch the fox, forcing Todd to use the railway track to escape. This isn't the first time we've seen this bridge, by the way. It was right there in the background during the opening credits chase scene. This film is full of foreshadowing. And it would seem that Todd's reckoning has finally come. That is until...
Come, Chief! Come! Oh, fuck.
Wow. Where do I begin? First off, talk about brutal. Imagine seeing your dog get hit by a train, then plummet off a bridge, hitting the cliff as he goes. Like I said, The movie's intro told us exactly what kind of ride we'd be on. And the stakes have just been cranked up. There's no going back now. Copper looks up to see Todd, furious that he got out of that unharmed. But he's not just angry at Todd. More likely, he's angry with himself. It was his decision to let Todd go. If he had done what he'd been trained by his master to do, what Chief advised him to do, this never would have happened. This is exactly what happened when they were kids. Their friendship got them both into trouble. Only this time, it was Chief who paid the price, not Copper. It's simple, yet effective drama. You can't blame any of these characters for the decisions they make. It's just a set of unfortunate circumstances. And now, Copper feels that he needs to make right by Chief and fix his mistake.
Todd, if it's the last thing I do, I'll get you for this.
Now, if by chance you're watching this and you haven't seen this film, first of all, thank you. But secondly, you've probably noticed, this film's pretty dark, isn't it? I mean, there's no blood, and only one death, and that was off screen. And I don't mean this movie is literally dark. No, I mean thematically dark. It's not your average by today's standards fluffy kids movie. Remember when kids movies would have some grit? Some challenge? Not enough to scar your kids kind of challenging, but not holding their hand either. It's sad is all. This era of animation will probably never return. No more Secret of Nims or Watership Downs. Only safe and secure content. Not that safe means automatically bad or anything, just, yeah, we should move on. So, Chief is definitely dead, right? Well, no, he survived. He has a broken leg. If I could point out the biggest flaw I think this film has, it would probably have to be this one. Now, don't get me wrong, the rest of the movie works well regardless. But Chief should have died. If he had died, failing to catch this fox, it would have lent even more narrative weight to future events. Also, just look at this, with no memes this time. Yeah, he's dead. He's dead. Here's my big brain theory. I think he did die. In an earlier draft of the script, I mean. But I imagine it was changed for fear of it being a bit too raw for target audiences. Hey, post-edit key here. I thought to check out the original version of the story from the novel. And yeah, Chief does get killed by the train. So, my theory was probably right. Also, the novel? Way more brutal than a Disney film. Like, really bloody brutal, Jesus Christ. It's a really small problem, I know. On the other hand, just goes to show how tight this film is, if this was the biggest flaw I could find. If I'm right anyway. Moving on, after Amos makes sure that Chief's been fixed up, we can see him storming the widow's house, with Todd safely back inside. In a rage, he tries to barge in, but she's having none of it. It's then he drops a massive truth bomb.
That fox of yours almost killed Chief. You can't keep him locked up forever.
And it becomes clear from her expression. She knows he's right. And she might have known that this day was going to come, sooner or later. Time to do what's best for Todd. After all, he's not a kid anymore, and she needs him a lot more than he needs her. And yeah, the scene's still rough to watch. I imagine if any of you watching have had to say goodbye to a pet, for one reason or another, this might hit a little too close to home. It's a good thing I don't have any feelings, otherwise this might get to me. The next few scenes show us Todd trying to adapt to his new environment, with difficulty. But with the help of Big Mama, he meets a female fox his own age.
He's young, about your age. And handsome.
Handsome? Oh, say, gee, he sure sounds nice.
And after a rough night in the forest, suddenly things aren't looking so bad for Todd.
Shh. But Big Mama, it's just getting interesting. Nice.
So, all's well and good now, right? Heh. No. Amos was paying attention when the widow took Todd away, and when she came back without him, we see the gears in his head start to turn.
She dropped that fox off in the game preserve.
As we enter into the final hunt, we're given yet another foreshadowing clue as to what's going to happen. Only, it isn't a hunt anymore. It's payback. Amos says as much himself.
No hunting. Well now, we ain't gonna do none of that, are we, Copper? We're just gonna get us a no-good fox.
It's all been building up to this. Throughout the whole film, characters have been warning Todd it was going to happen, and we've had countless references to the conflict that's about to unfold. Notice how the music here has the same harmonica from Copper's theme, only here, it's in minor key, as opposed to upbeat major key, enforcing the idea that Copper is still the same character, but isn't the naive puppy from before. Of course, Copper eventually picks up Todd's scent, and the trap is set.
He'll be coming right through here heading for water. But he won't be drinking any.
I have said it before, and I'll say it again. God, is the music good. This is bordering on horror movie, with the amount of tension it builds up.
Todd, be careful.
The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. A small nitpick here. You'd think he preloaded his gun right after he set up all of his traps, wouldn't you? Though I suppose it doesn't make too much difference. Todd was on high alert by the time he got close, so... And just like that, barely dodging the traps, the fox is on the run, with the hounds in high pursuit. Our characters turning to savagery, with the music changing to this chaotic track to reflect it. Here's a neat detail you might have missed. It goes by pretty quick, but if you watch, Todd actually gets a shot at Copper's neck. He could have actually killed him here, but he lets go and runs. I like to think even now he doesn't want to fight Copper, and only gets aggressive to protect his mate. The stakes continue to get higher and higher as the chase goes from the woods to the burrow to the mountaintop, with the foxes just barely one step ahead, until it seems that Todd and Vixie may have given them the slip. With Copper hot on their trail, disaster strikes, and a third party enters the hunt.
Copper, we trapped him now!
I got diarrhea!
Suddenly, the tables have turned, and the hunters become the hunted. Copper, being the best boy he is, throws himself at the bear to save his master. And what should happen to Amos? But to walk right into one of his own traps. Now, I'm going to bring up a quote from the widow that I didn't show before.
Amos Slade, that temper of yours is going to get you into a lot of trouble someday.
Temper!
How poetic it is that he should fall prey to his own trap, because of his unrelenting desire to kill this fox once and for all. That his anger and hate led him straight into the claws of a bear. He quite literally fell on his own sword. Despite Copper's best attempts, there's no way to win against a grizzly bear. And as he's getting pummeled, Todd can hear the cries of his friend. I'm going to praise the animators again for the attention to detail. You can see by the look on his face, he's pausing, contemplating leaving Copper to his death. He doesn't go into hero mode and rush in to save the day. No. After all, if the bear kills them both, he and Vixie are home free. On the other hand, Copper is still his friend. He doesn't make the decision straight away. But, as it turns out, Todd chooses friendship over instinct, and rushes in to draw attention away from Copper. Whether it was from guilt over what happened to Chief, or merely the fact that he didn't want Copper to suffer such a violent death. He manages to use hit-and-run tactics to lure the bear away, but eventually gets hit with one swipe, which is enough to fling him onto the fallen tree. The bear, eager to kill this annoying pest, slashes down, breaking the tree, and hurling them both into the lake below. In another poetic reversal, Todd is now in the position that Chief was in. Copper arrives shortly to find Todd, who's completely spent and can no longer run. The chase is over. Amos quickly arrives thereafter, gun loaded and ready. This scene right here, this is why I made this video. Well, the main reason at least. You've been with me this far, so I ask that you buckle up. There's a lot to unpack here. Now, finally, Amos can avenge his dog, and this obsession with Todd will end. After spending the entire film wanting to end this damn fox, as any good hunter would. But before he can deliver the killing blow.
Come on, Copper. Get out of the way.
After everything these characters have been through, Copper chooses to defy his master and refuse his commands. Now, there are themes of prejudice and war present throughout this film that I imagine stem from the original novel. And I can't speak for the book since I haven't read it. But this film portrays an extra layer of tasty themage over everything else. I'm talking about how it portrays the concept of loneliness and loss. Remember back at the beginning when I mentioned how Amos and the widow were the only people that lived on their farms? The widow, being called a widow, must have had a significant other once upon a time. Having Todd around made her happy, as much as a handful as he was. Despite just being a fox, letting him go must have been just as hard as losing her loved one. When you've been lonely for long enough, it's understandable. Todd was a fish out of water, growing up in a human world. He was bored and lonely, until he met Copper. The Hound was the only one there his own age, and he was completely oblivious that Todd's existence here was weird or wrong. And when it came time for both of them to grow up, Todd was afraid of losing that friendship, afraid to go back to that sinking pit of isolation. Then, to make matters worse, he ended up losing his home and loving owner in the process, creating an even bigger hole in his life. Amos and Copper are a little different. They were content with their lives together. The problems only started when they nearly lost Chief. At that point, they both responded with anger and hate. For both of them, The driving factor was the fear of loss. It's where it all stems from. But having seen Todd give up his life for coppers, despite trying to kill him just moments ago, all for the sake of their past friendship, it makes the feelings of grief, rage, and hatred melt away. And now, he's going to do the same for him, even if that means going up against his loving owner. Witnessing this act, we see Amos pause. For the final time, I'm going to praise the animators. We see this man go through the motions just by looking at his face. Starting with hatred for Todd as he's about to shoot, to anger at Copper ignoring his commands, to bewilderment that Copper is still standing between them. Next, we see a look of sorrowful contemplation, and then, finally, acceptance and relief. All of this accomplished with a series of quick, fluid transitions. This is difficult, by the way, to put that much reflection of emotions into an illustration, and I think it's deserving of praise. Now, I think the takeaway that most people would get out of this exchange is that Copper, and by extension Amos, let Todd go because he saved them from the bear. But I think it goes much, much deeper than that. The message Copper was trying to convey to his master was that killing Todd would change nothing. It wouldn't help either of them feel any better. In other words, the character arc Amos had to go through was to let go of his anger. He nearly lost Chief because of his vendetta against this one fox, and he nearly got Copper and himself killed by continuing the hunt. But, after all, it isn't a hunt anymore. It's murder. He knows it. He knows it's wrong. And it took him his own hunting dog to make him finally see. To just let it go. After this, he simply pats his hunting partner on the head and starts for home. Copper breathes a sigh and starts to follow. But not before he and Todd share one final non-verbal exchange. Before I conclude my thoughts on The Fox and the Hound, I have a confession to make. The title of the video is that Amos is Disney's best anti-villain, but I cheated a little bit. Now, I do believe he fulfills the criteria of being an anti-villain, and I do think his character is well written. But here's the cheese. I think he's actually the only anti-villain in Disney's roster. Am I wrong? To be fair, I haven't watched some of their more recent movies, so maybe this statement is now out of date. But I have watched like nearly all of their animated films. I mean, what comes close? Maybe Man in Bambi? But Man is less of a character and more of an off-screen force. Yeah, I really can't think of another character that fits the same criteria as Amos Slade. His actions in this film make sense. He has justifiable reasons for what he does. But that doesn't make him right, nor even make him a neutral character. He actively decided to take Copper and hunt the fox down, despite knowing he was taken to a wildlife preserve, where he would no longer be a threat to his livestock. These are villainous actions, no matter how justified he believes he is. So then, what about other antagonists, like Ursula or Scar? Wouldn't they count as anti-villains? They probably think they're justified in what they're doing, right? Well, the difference is motivation. Scar might think he'd make a better king, that he deserves it more, and he'd probably tell you as much if you asked him directly. But then you see him act out towards other characters in this film.
You can't do that.
I am a king. I can do whatever I want.
You know the law.
Never ever mention that name in my presence. I am the king.
If you were half the king Mufasa was, you would
I'm
never...
10 times the king Mufasa was.
Yeah, he did it out of jealousy. He's envious and prideful. Look at those green eyes. You jelly! You jelly! And Ursula was a psychopath who wanted to tear down Triton and take over the ocean. Because he banished her? Probably for being a villain. Yeah, she probably wasn't very nice to begin with. Can't wait for the live-action Ursula movie to tell us why she's not bad, actually! Therefore, I fit Amos in the anti-villain category. Or at least, he's in a very dark, grey area, if anything. Because, forgive me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't see taking revenge for your dead, critically injured dog as being quite in the same league as the rest. It was done out of love, essentially for a fallen family member.
Get back in there before I break your other leg.
After that harrowing series of events, we cut back to the farm, where we see some slight changes. The biggest change is that the widow and Amos seem to be getting along now. She's even tending to his injuries, cracking jokes all the while.
You'll soon be yourself. Oh, land sakes. I don't know if I like that.
And though he seems to be right back to his usual grumpy self, he lets her help him, which implies that he probably bears no ill will against her. We also see that Chief seems to be in better health, and Copper happily beside him once again. We listen to Todd and Copper's theme as it transitions to the widow's farewell theme, only now it's in major key, almost as if the music is trying to tell us that this was the best outcome. Having needed to watch this film a few times to make this retrospective, I noticed Copper probably smiles right there and then, because he could smell Todd was close by. And the film leaves us with somewhat of a bittersweet ending. The widow had to separate herself from Todd, but it seems that she's going to open up more to her neighbour, that she's able to move on. She doesn't need to be so lonely. Todd managed to fill the hole in his life, in the end, with his new mate. Amos goes back to his simple life with his 2 hounds. And Copper has the satisfaction of knowing that, though they may never see each other again, he and Todd got to part ways, not as enemies, but as friends. And there you have it. I have to apologise for all the Disney bashing I did earlier. Well, sorry not sorry. I do honestly think that the magic has completely drained out of the House of Mouse at this point. What with all their remakes and reboots and IPs, I just wanted to appreciate something from the past that I think gets overlooked. But hey, if there's a silver lining, at least there won't be a live-action remake for this one. But never say never, I guess.